Have you ever imagined that a destitute single mother living in a drafty apartment overrun with rats could accidentally save New York's most powerful crime boss from losing millions of dollars using just a napkin and a pen? Terrifyingly, that very moment caused him, the dangerous man with blood on his hands, to fall into a mad, intense love at first sight. He pulled her out of the hell of poverty, cured her son's illness, erased her debts to the loan shark. But what was the price? Tragic and horrifying. She was brutally beaten, her son was kidnapped, and both nearly lost their lives. All because his dark heart had chosen her. And the most shocking, spine-chilling twist you could never expect? It turns out he had been secretly protecting her and her son for 8 whole years, ever since she was a 13-year-old girl who saved his life in a dark alley. Will this burning love save them from the darkness, or will it consume everything? Stay to discover this tear-jerking, violent, and haunting story of fate right now. Before we dive into this chilling and mysterious story, please remember to subscribe to the channel Alex Truths and like this video. Every subscription, like, and share from you is a huge spiritual gift and an incredibly profound source of motivation for the channel's growth, so we can continue bringing wonderful videos every day to everyone. There would be no greater joy than receiving your love and support through the comments you leave right below this video. Comments sharing your emotions, or telling us which province or city you're living and working in while listening to this story. All right, let's continue together and immerse ourselves in this amazing, captivating story that's filled with deep emotions. The wind howled through the broken window of my tiny Brooklyn apartment, carrying the sharp bite of late October 2025. I pulled the threadbare blanket tighter around my shoulders, but it did nothing to stop the cold that had settled deep in my bones. My name is Emily Carter, 28 years old, and I have not had a full night's sleep in months. My son Ethan, my sweet 8-year-old boy, lay curled on the mattress beside me, his small chest rising and falling with the labored breathing that had become too familiar. The leukemia treatments had taken everything from us. My savings, my health, my dignity. And now the landlord was threatening eviction because I was 3 months behind on rent. The electric bill had been shut off 2 weeks ago, so we lived by the dim glow of a single battery lantern. I had not eaten anything but half a can of beans since yesterday morning. My stomach ached, but hunger was an old friend. I worked 3 jobs to keep us alive. Days I scrubbed floors at a downtown office building. Evenings, I waited tables at a greasy diner in Bay Ridge. And every night from 11 until 6 in the morning, I was the graveyard shift barista at the 24-hour corporate cafeteria on the top floor of Harrington Tower in Manhattan, the glittering glass skyscraper owned by the Harrington family. They said it was the safest building in the city. To me, it was just another place where rich people never looked at people like me. That night, I was mopping the marble floors after the last executives had left. The cafeteria was empty except for the low hum of the refrigerators and the distant rumble of the city below. My hands were raw from bleach, my uniform stained, my hair pulled back in a messy knot because I could not afford the luxury of a proper brush. I moved slowly, saving energy, because my legs trembled from exhaustion. As I wiped down the long conference table, my eyes fell on a stack of discarded financial reports someone had left behind. They were printed on thick, expensive paper, nothing like the cheap printer paper I used for Ethan's school forms. Numbers, columns, graphs. I should have just thrown them away, but something caught my eye. A small discrepancy in the cash flow statement. A pattern. Money disappearing in tiny, consistent amounts, never enough to raise alarms, but over months and years, it added up to millions. My heart started pounding. I had dropped out of community college when Ethan got sick, but before that, I had been good with numbers. Really good. I had studied accounting for 2 years, dreaming of a life where I could give my son everything. Life had other plans. I grabbed a napkin and a pen from the counter, scribbling notes as I traced the trail. The money was being siphoned through shell companies, routed to a single offshore account. I knew that account number. It belonged to the chief financial officer, Mr. Daniel Walsh, the man who always smiled politely when I handed him his morning coffee. He had been with Harrington Enterprises for 15 years, trusted, respected. I finished the note in less than a minute, my handwriting shaky but clear. I folded the napkin and set it on the table, then went back to mopping. That was when I felt it, someone watching me. I turned slowly. At the far end of the room, half hidden in shadow, stood a man. Tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a perfectly tailored charcoal suit that probably cost more than my entire wardrobe. Fair-skinned, with sharp features and piercing gray eyes that seemed to cut straight through me. His hair was dark, neatly styled, but there was something dangerous in the way he stood, still, controlled, like a predator deciding whether to strike. My stomach dropped. I knew who he was. Everyone in New York knew. Alexander Harrington, the most powerful man in the city. Head of Harrington Enterprises by day, and by night, well, no one said it out loud, but the rumors were endless. He was the man who could make people disappear without a trace. He stepped forward, his polished shoes making soft clicks on the marble. "You shouldn't be touching those files," he said, his voice low, calm, but carrying the weight of absolute authority. I swallowed hard, clutching the mop handle like a lifeline. I was just cleaning, sir. I didn't mean to." He picked up the napkin, read what I had written, and his expression didn't change, but something flickered in those gray eyes. Surprise. Then something deeper. Interest. "Explain," he said simply. My voice came out small, trembling. "The numbers, they're wrong. Someone is stealing from you. Small amounts every month, always on the same day, always using the same code. It's Mr. Walsh. The money goes to this account in the Caymans." He studied me for a long moment. I felt naked under that gaze, like he could see every hole in my shoes, every tear in my soul. "You're the night barista," he said. "Emily Carter." I nodded, my throat tight. How did he know my name? He turned and dialed a number on his phone. "Marco, conference room, now." Less than 2 minutes later, a tall man with a scarred face and cold eyes entered. Marco. Everyone knew Marco. He was Mr. Harrington's shadow. "Check the account she wrote down," Mr. Harrington ordered. Marco sat at the computer, fingers flying across the keys. The room fell silent except for the tapping and my pounding heart. I stood there, mop dripping onto the floor, wondering if I was about to lose my job, or worse. Then Marco looked up. "She's right, boss. It's Walsh. He's been skimming for 3 years, over $8 million. The air in the room turned icy. Mr. Harrington's face remained calm, but I could feel the storm beneath it. He turned to Marco. "Deal with him." Marco nodded once and left, just like that. No questions, no hesitation. Mr. Harrington turned back to me. "You just saved me $8 million, Miss Carter. Who are you?" I looked down at my stained uniform, my cracked hands, my cheap sneakers with holes in the soles. "I'm nobody," I whispered. "Just a barista. I clean tables and pour coffee." He stepped closer, close enough that I could smell his cologne, something expensive, woodsy, warm. "I didn't ask what you do. I asked who you are." My eyes filled with tears I didn't want him to see. "I'm Emily Carter, 28, single mother. My son Ethan has leukemia. I work 3 jobs to pay for his treatments and keep a roof over our heads. I live in a 1-room apartment in Brownsville that smells like mold and has rats in the walls. I owe a loan shark $40,000, and he's threatening to hurt Ethan if I don't pay by next week. I dropped out of college when Ethan got sick. I used to dream of being an accountant. Now I dream of just surviving another day." I stopped, horrified that I had said so much. But he didn't laugh. He didn't look away. He just watched me with those gray eyes, and for the first time in years, I felt seen. "Where did you learn to read numbers like that?" he asked quietly. "In college," I said, "and in life. When you're poor, you learn to spot every lie because every dollar matters. Every lie costs you food, heat, medicine." He nodded slowly, as if weighing something heavy. Then he spoke again, his voice softer but still commanding. "Tomorrow morning at 10. Come to my office on the 75th floor. That's not a request." I stared at him. "For what? To clean more tables?" "To decide how much you're worth," he said, "and to offer you a job that pays 10 times what you make now. Health insurance, a safe apartment, everything Ethan needs." My knees almost gave out. "Why would you do that?" "Because I've spent my life surrounded by people who lie for money," he said. "And tonight, the first honest person I've met in years just walked into my building wearing a stained apron and saved me $8 million. He turned to leave, then paused. "And Emily?" I looked up, heart racing. "Bring your son's medical records tomorrow. I'll make sure he gets the best care in the city." He walked away, leaving me standing there in the cold cafeteria, mop in hand, tears streaming down my face. I didn't know whether to feel grateful or terrified. I only knew that everything had just changed, and I had no idea what was coming next. But as I gathered my things and stepped into the freezing night air, I felt something I hadn't felt in years, a tiny, fragile spark of hope. And somewhere deep inside, a whisper that maybe, just maybe, this powerful, dangerous man had just seen me, really seen me, and decided I was worth saving. Little did I know that spark would soon become a wildfire, burning away every wall I had built to protect my broken heart. The subway rattled like a dying beast through the tunnels beneath Manhattan, carrying me toward Harrington Tower on that crisp October morning in 2025. I clutched Ethan's medical records in a manila folder, the edges frayed from too many desperate flips through doctor's notes and unpaid bills. My stomach twisted with nausea, part from skipping breakfast again, part from the terror gnawing at my insides. What was I doing? Walking into the lion's den, dressed in my one clean blouse that smelled faintly of diner grease and my worn jeans that hung loose on my too thin frame. I had not weighed more than 90 pounds since Ethan's diagnosis 3 years ago. Sleep was a stranger. Last night, after Mr. Harrington's words echoed in my head like a fever dream, I had lain awake until dawn, listening to the wind whistle through the cracks in our Brownsville walls, rats scratching in the vents like accusatory whispers. "You're nobody," they seemed to say. "Why would a man like that care?" Ethan was safe today, dropped at the free after-school program at the community center, where they fed him a hot meal I could not afford. But the thought of him alone, his small hands cold from the autumn chill, made my chest ache like it was being squeezed in a vice. I pressed my forehead against the grimy subway window, fighting dizziness. The world blurred, poverty's constant companion, that numb disorientation where hope and fear tangled until you could not tell one from the other. Harrington Tower loomed ahead as I emerged into the sunlight, a 75-story monolith of glass and steel that pierced the sky like a declaration of untouchable power. I felt like an ant approaching a cathedral. The lobby was a sea of marble and polished brass, chandeliers dripping crystal like frozen rain. Suited executives glided past, clutching briefcases worth more than my yearly rent, their eyes sliding over me without registering, a ghost in rags. My sneakers squeaked on the floor, echoing my humiliation. I approached the reception desk, my voice barely above a whisper. I have an appointment with Mr. Harrington at 10. The guard, a burly man with a badge gleaming like a taunt, looked me up and down, his lip curling in disbelief. "You? With Alexander Harrington? Name?" "Emily Carter," I said softly, politely, my cheeks burning. I was 28, but in moments like this, I felt like a child again, timid, shrinking under the weight of eyes that saw only failure. He tapped his computer, snorted. Not on the list. Step aside, miss. We don't do charity here. My heart plummeted, a cold wave of powerlessness washing over me. Of course not. Why would he mean it? Tears pricked my eyes, but I blinked them back, clutching the folder like a shield. Please, sir, he asked me to come. Last night, Before I could finish, a shadow fell across the desk. She's with me. I turned, and there he was, Alexander Harrington, striding from the elevator like he owned the air itself. Which, in a way, he did. Fair-skinned, impeccably dressed in a navy suit that hugged his broad shoulders, a silk tie the color of midnight. His gray eyes locked on mine, and for a split second the lobby faded. But beneath that commanding gaze, I glimpsed something raw, a flicker of torment, like a man wrestling shadows he could not name. The guard snapped to attention. Mr. Harrington, I didn't— Escort her up, Alex said, his voice steel wrapped in velvet. He did not look at the guard. His eyes stayed on me, intense, searching, as if he had been waiting. I followed him into the private elevator, the doors whispering shut like a trap closing. The ascent was silent agony, my pulse thundering, curiosity warring with fear. Why me? What does he want? The car hummed upward, and I caught my reflection in the mirrored wall. Hollow cheeks, dark circles like bruises under my eyes, hair limp from malnutrition. Beside me, Alex Harrington radiated wealth. His watch alone could pay Ethan's next treatment. The disparity hit like a slap, leaving me numb, disoriented. I swayed slightly, gripping the rail to steady myself. You look like you haven't eaten, he said quietly, without turning. I flushed, voice timid. I'm fine, sir, just a long morning. The doors opened to the 75th floor, a realm of walnut paneling, floor-to-ceiling windows framing the Hudson River like a private kingdom. His office was vast, a fortress of leather-bound books and abstract art that screamed old money. A massive desk dominated the space, piled with reports thicker than my medical folder. He gestured to a plush chair opposite him. Sit, Emily. I perched on the edge, hands folded in my lap, polite and guarded. Thank you for seeing me, Mr. Harrington. I brought the records like you asked. I slid the folder across the desk, my fingers trembling. Inside were the brutal truths, scans showing tumors like storm clouds in Ethan's tiny body, bills stamped overdue in red ink, notes from social workers urging me to consider options I could not bear to think about. He opened it slowly, his expression unreadable. But as he turned the pages, something shifted in his gray eyes, a storm brewing. Guilt? Remorse? I could not tell, but it tore at him visibly, his jaw tightening as if each word on the page was a knife twisting in his chest. He had built an empire on ruthlessness, they said. Deals in shadowed alleys, rivals vanishing into the night. Yet here, holding my son's fate in his hands, he looked like a man haunted by ghosts of his own making. What have I become? I imagined him thinking. A king who crushes the weak without a second thought? After a long silence, condensed, still, like the hush before a breakdown, he closed the folder. $800,000, he said softly. That's what these treatments have cost so far, and more to come. I nodded, throat tight. I know. I've sold everything. My car, my jewelry, even Ethan's old toys. The loan shark, he calls every night. Last week, he sent a picture of Ethan at school. Said if I miss another payment, he'll make sure my boy never comes home. The words hung in the air, unreasonable, unjust, like so many blows life had dealt me. A single mother abandoned by a deadbeat, fighting a disease that preyed on the innocent, now stalked by predators who smelled blood. My voice cracked, soft and pleading. I'm sorry. I shouldn't burden you with this. You're a busy man. He leaned forward, elbows on the desk, and for the first time, I saw the violent conflict raging inside him. His hands clenched, knuckles white, as if battling an invisible foe. Remorse gnawed at his features, deep lines etching his fair skin, eyes darkening with a remorse that felt personal, consuming. Burden me? Emily, you saved my company $8 million with a napkin and a pen, while He trailed off, voice rough. I've spent years building walls of money and power, thinking it would fill the emptiness. But last night, watching you, brave, broken, but unbroken, I felt something crack inside me. Guilt for every life I've ruined chasing more. Remorse for being blind to people like you. And something else, a pull, fierce and immediate, like you've ignited a fire I didn't know was there. My breath caught, confusion swirling with a spark of curiosity. He's looking at me like I'm a miracle. Me? Dizziness hit again, the room tilting. I gripped the chair arms, numb with shock. A man like him, wealth incarnate, with private jets and armored cars, seeing me? It tore at my heart violently, leaving me raw. Before I could respond, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, face hardening. Marco, trouble downtown. Rival crew, the O'Connors, trying to muscle in on our docks. He stood, all coiled power, but hesitated, eyes flicking to me with tormented longing. Stay here, I'll handle it. No, wait, I whispered, fearful, standing too quickly. The world spun, pain lancing my temples from exhaustion. Is it dangerous? He paused at the door, inner turmoil etching deeper, guilt warring with duty, a man torn between his dark world and this fragile light before him. It's always dangerous, but for you, I'd burn it all down. Then he was gone, the elevator swallowing him. Alone, I sank back, heart pounding. Unjust tears came, hot, silent, for the life that had stripped me bare. Nights huddled with Ethan under thin blankets, wind howling like a bully at the door. The time the hospital turned us away because I had pennies, not dollars. The absurd cruelty of a system that let children suffer while towers like this scraped the sky. I curled inward, tormented, whispering to the empty room, why now? Why him? Minutes stretched into eternity. Then shouts echoed from the lobby below, tense, bold voices rising like thunder. I crept to the window, peering down. On the street, Alex faced off against 3 burly men in leather jackets, O'Connor enforcers by their tattoos. No guns, just raw standoff, words sharp as blades. This city's mine, Riley, Alex growled, voice carrying up like a challenge. Touch my docks again, and you'll swim in the Hudson. One lunged, fist raised in a bold, unexpected shove. Alex sidestepped, grabbing the man's arm in a twist that dropped him to his knees. Swift, controlled, no blood spilled, but the air crackled with suspense. His men materialized from alleys, shadows closing in. The rivals backed off, slinking away, but not before hissing threats. You're slipping, Harrington. That soft spot'll be your end. He looked up then, straight at the tower, as if sensing me. Our eyes met through glass layers, and in that gaze, suspicion melted into something overwhelming. For him, a surge, passionate, burning love from the first stolen glance last night, now exploding into fierce protectiveness. She's mine to save, it screamed in his soul, clashing with remorse for the violence he wielded. For me, shock, dizzying, numbing, as power bent toward pity. He fought for me? Without knowing? He returned minutes later, slightly disheveled, a fresh bruise blooming on his jaw. But his eyes softened on me, deep with conflict. They won't bother us again. Not today. I stood, voice timid, polite. You didn't have to. I did. He closed the distance, towering yet gentle, his wealth a tangible aura, cufflinks glinting like stars. Emily, I'm offering you a job. Analyst, 6 figures, full benefits. I'll cover Ethan's treatments, every cent. And the apartment? Consider the debt erased. The words hit like lightning, tearing my world apart. Confusion, fear, curiosity exploded. This can't be real. It's a trap. But his eyes, they burn. I swayed, pain and disorientation crashing in waves. Why? I'm nothing. A broke mom scraping by. He cupped my elbow, steadying me, his touch electric, igniting that forbidden spark. You're everything I've been missing. Honest, fierce, and God help me, from the moment you wrote that note, I've been fighting a war inside, wanting to shield you, to claim you, while guilt screams I don't deserve to. But I can't walk away. Say yes, Emily. Let me pull you from this hell. Tears spilled, violent and cathartic. In that quiet stillness, our breaths mingling, I whispered, yes. And as his hand lingered, the fire between us kindled, passionate, intense, a promise of storms to come. Little did I know, this offer was just the beginning of a love that would shatter us both, only to rebuild from the ashes. The first paycheck hit my bank account on a gray November morning in 2025, and I stared at the screen of the cracked phone in my hand until the numbers blurred into tears. 6 figures for 1 month's work. More money than I had earned in the last 3 years combined. I sat on the sagging mattress in our Brownsville apartment, Ethan asleep beside me, his small body finally warm under a new blanket I had bought with trembling hands. For the first time in forever, the heat was on. The radiator clanked like an old friend instead of a taunt, but the relief was laced with terror, sharp, dizzying terror that this was all a dream, and I would wake to find the electricity cut off again, the loan shark's voice on the voicemail, the wind slicing through the walls like knives. I had been working as Alex Harrington's special financial analyst for 3 weeks now. A small office on the 74th floor, a computer that cost more than our rent for a year, access to reports that made my old community college textbooks look like children's books. Every morning, I rode the subway in clean clothes, simple but new. And every evening, I came home to Ethan with grocery bags full of fresh fruit, real milk, chicken that wasn't past its date. He was gaining weight. His cheeks had color. The doctors at Memorial Sloan Kettering had moved him to the top of every list. Miracles, they called it. I called it Alexander Harrington. But miracles came with shadows. I still could not sleep. The nights were filled with the memory of his touch that day in his office, his hand steadying my elbow, the heat of his palm searing through my thin blouse. The way his gray eyes had darkened when he said, "Let me pull you from this hell." I would lie in the dark, heart pounding, torn between suspicion and a longing so fierce it frightened me. He's a powerful man, dangerous. Why would he care about a broke single mother from the projects? Yet every time our eyes met across a conference room, something electric passed between us, an unspoken promise, a burning pull that made my breath catch and my knees weak. Alex was changing too. I saw it in the quiet moments, the way his jaw clenched when he read Ethan's latest scan results, the way he lingered after meetings, finding excuses to walk me to the elevator. Once, late at night, I found him alone in his office, staring out at the city lights, a glass of whiskey untouched in his hand. When he noticed me, his mask slipped, just for a second, and I saw the torment, guilt like acid eating at him, remorse for the empire built on shadows, violent conflict raging behind those gray eyes. I don't deserve her, I imagined him thinking. I've ruined lives, and now I want to save hers? He never spoke of it. Instead, he acted. One evening in mid-November, I came home to find the apartment door unlocked. My heart stopped. I rushed in, calling Ethan's name, panic clawing my throat. But the place was transformed. The peeling paint was gone. Fresh cream walls gleamed under new light fixtures. The broken window was replaced with double-pane glass that kept out the wind. A new refrigerator hummed quietly, stocked with food. The mattress we slept on had been swapped for real beds, Ethan's with superhero sheets, mine with soft linens that smelled like lavender. On the kitchen table sat an envelope with my name in elegant handwriting. Inside was a single sheet. The debt is gone. The apartment is yours, paid in full. No one will ever threaten you or Ethan again. A.H. I sank to the floor, envelope clutched to my chest, and sobbed. Not gentle tears, violent, body-shaking sobs that tore from the deepest part of me. All the years of humiliation flooded out. The nights I had gone hungry so Ethan could eat. The times I had begged social workers for extensions. The voicemail from the loan shark, Ronnie Valdez, promising to take my son if I didn't pay. Gone. Just like that. One man's word, and my nightmare vanished. But the unfairness of it crushed me too. Why me? Why now? Thousands of mothers suffered like I had, worse even. Children died every day because their parents couldn't afford treatment. And here I was, lifted out of hell by a man whose world I didn't understand. It felt wrong, undeserved. The guilt mingled with gratitude until I could barely breathe. I did not thank him the next day. I couldn't find words. But when he passed me in the hallway, his eyes searched mine, tormented, as if he feared I would reject his gift. I managed a whisper. "Thank you, Mr. Harrington." Soft, timid, polite. He stopped, hand half raised as if to touch my arm, then let it fall. "Alex," he said quietly. "Call me Alex." That night, the city turned hostile. I was walking home from the subway, later than usual, having stayed to finish a report, when I felt it. Eyes on me. A black SUV idled across the street from my building. Two men leaned against it, smoking, watching. My pulse spiked. I hurried inside, double-locking the door, heart hammering. Through the new blinds, I saw them linger another hour before driving off. The next morning, I told Alex. Not everything, just that I felt watched. His face turned to stone. "Stay in the tower tonight," he said. "Both of you. There's a guest suite." I wanted to argue, but the fear in my throat stopped me. That evening, as Ethan and I settled into the luxurious suite, marble bathroom, king bed soft as clouds, view of the Brooklyn Bridge glittering like diamonds, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. A photo loaded slowly. Ethan walking into school that morning, taken from behind. Below it, a message. "Pretty boy. Shame if something happened." I dropped the phone, dizziness crashing over me like a wave. The room spun. I stumbled to the bathroom and retched, nothing coming up but bile. When I emerged, pale and shaking, Alex was there. How, I didn't know. He must have seen the security feed. He read the message without a word, then crushed the phone in his hand like it was paper. His eyes blazed, not with anger at me, but with a fury so deep it frightened me. And beneath it, agony. Remorse that he had pulled me into his world, guilt that his protection had painted a target on my son. "I'll handle it," he said, voice low, shaking with restraint. That night, while Ethan slept in the guest bed, Alex left with Marco and 4 others. I watched from the tower window as their convoy rolled out into the darkness. Hours later, sirens echoed faintly across the river. News alerts pinged on my new work tablet. 2 men hospitalized after confrontation in Brownsville. Suspected loan shark associate Ronnie Valdez missing. Police investigating. I sat on the balcony in the cold November wind, wrapped in one of Alex's cashmere coats he had left for me, and cried again. Quiet, condensed tears this time. For the absurdity of it all, a man I barely knew risking everything to shield us from monsters. for the violent tearing inside my heart, gratitude so fierce it hurt, fear that this couldn't last, and something new, something burning and impossible, love. It had started as suspicion, gratitude, curiosity. Now it was a wildfire, consuming me from the inside. When Alex returned just before dawn, his knuckles bruised, a cut above his eyebrow, he found me still on the balcony. He didn't speak at first, just stood beside me, staring out at the city he ruled and loathed in equal measure. "They won't come near you again," he said finally, voice raw. I made sure. I turned to him, voice soft, trembling. "You could have been hurt. For us." He looked at me then, and the torment in his gray eyes broke something open in both of us. "I've hurt people my whole life, Emily. Built this empire on fear and blood. But you and Ethan, you're the first pure thing I've ever touched. And God help me, I'd burn the whole city down before I let anyone take you from me." The words hung between us in the freezing air. His hand rose slowly, hesitating, then brushed a tear from my cheek with heartbreaking gentleness. The touch ignited us both. I leaned into it without thinking, and for a moment we stood there, two broken souls on the edge of something vast and terrifying. Inside him, the war raged louder than ever. Remorse for the darkness he carried, guilt that he might taint her light, and a love so sudden, so overwhelming, it felt like drowning in fire. For me, the poor barista who had nothing, suddenly everything. The shock was numbing, violent, tearing my heart in two. How can a man like him love someone like me? But in that quiet, condensed stillness on the balcony, with the city waking below us, I felt it too. The surge. Passionate, intense, burning from the very first moment his eyes had met mine in the shadows of the cafeteria. And now, unstoppable. I whispered his name, Alex, and it sounded like a vow. He closed his eyes as if in pain, then rested his forehead against mine. "I don't know how to do this," he confessed, voice breaking, "but I can't let you go." Neither of us moved away. The wind howled around us, but for the first time in years, I wasn't cold. December crept into New York like a thief, stealing the last warmth from the air and painting the city in frost. It was early December 2025, and I had been living in the new reality Alex Harrington had built around Ethan and me for nearly a month. The apartment in Brooklyn Heights, paid for, safe, with heat that actually worked and windows that didn't rattle, was still a dream I expected to wake from. Every morning, I touched the smooth kitchen counter, half afraid it would dissolve into the cracked linoleum of our old place. Ethan's laughter echoed off high ceilings now, not mold-stained walls. He had gained 8 pounds. His eyes shone. The doctors spoke of remission as if it were possible, not a cruel joke. Yet the richer my outer world became, the poorer my inner one felt. Gratitude and terror wrestled inside me until I could barely breathe. I was still thin, still sleep-deprived, still haunted by memories of nights when the wind had howled through broken panes while I held Ethan close, whispering promises I couldn't keep. The contrast tore at me violently. The memory of eating plain rice for weeks so he could have protein, now replaced by grocery deliveries of organic everything. It felt unjust, absurdly unfair that one man's decision could rewrite our fate while thousands of other mothers still huddled in the cold. At Harrington Tower, I worked long hours. The reports I analyzed grew more complex, the vulnerabilities I uncovered more dangerous. Alex listened to every word I said in meetings, his gray eyes fixed on me with an intensity that made my pulse race. Colleagues whispered. Senior executives who once ignored the night barista now nodded respectfully. But the whispers carried envy too, and I felt their stares like needles. The late nights began innocently enough. The first time, it was a snowstorm in mid-December. The subways shut down, streets turned to slush. Alex found me in my office at 10 at night, staring helplessly at the weather app. "You and Ethan stay here," he said. No question, just quiet command wrapped in concern. He led us to his private penthouse atop the tower, 3,500 square feet of glass and marble, a fireplace crackling with real wood, a kitchen larger than my old entire apartment. Ethan's eyes went wide as saucers. I stood frozen in the doorway, dizziness sweeping over me at the sheer excess of it all. That night, after Ethan fell asleep in a guest room bigger than our Brownsville home, Alex poured 2 glasses of whiskey, expensive amber liquid that glowed in the firelight, and handed me one. "Sit," he said softly. "You look like you're carrying the world." I perched on the edge of a leather sofa that probably cost more than a car, clutching the glass with both hands. "I don't know how to do this," I whispered, voice timid, polite. All of it. The money, the safety, you. He sat across from me, elbows on knees, staring into the flames. Silence stretched, quiet, condensed, heavy with everything unsaid. Then he spoke, voice rough with torment. "I don't know how to do this either, Emily. I've spent 20 years building walls. Money, power, fear. I thought that was strength. But you?" He looked at me, and the remorse in his eyes was a living thing, gnawing at him. "You walked in with nothing but honesty and a napkin note, and you cracked every wall I had. I feel guilt every day for the things I've done to stay on top, for the lives I've ruined. And now I'm terrified that I'll ruin yours too." My heart twisted violently. Shock, confusion, a surge of something burning and impossible. "You saved us," I said softly. "You didn't ruin anything." He shook his head. "I pulled you into my world, and my world has teeth." As if summoned by the words, his phone buzzed. Marco's voice on speaker. "Boss, Doyle crew just rolled up on the West Side piers. They're blocking our shipment. Want us to move?" Alex's face hardened, but his eyes stayed on me, conflicted, torn. "Stay with her," he told Marco through the phone. Then to me, "Lock the door behind me." He was gone for 3 hours. I paced the penthouse, anxiety clawing my throat. Ethan slept peacefully, unaware. I stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows, watching snow swirl over the city, and prayed to a God I had almost stopped believing in. When Alex returned, snow in his dark hair, a split lip blooming red, he found me curled on the sofa, shaking. He knelt in front of me without a word, gently tilting my chin to check if I was hurt. "It's nothing," he murmured about his own injury. "Just words and posturing." They backed down. But I saw the cost in his eyes, the violent inner war between the man who ruled New York's shadows and the one who wanted to be worthy of the woman in front of him. After that, the late nights became habit. We would work until the city quieted, then share takeout in his office, pizza from a place in Little Italy that delivered only to him, or sushi flown in fresh from Japan. He listened as I spoke of my past, dropping out of college when Ethan was diagnosed, selling my mother's wedding ring to pay for one more treatment, the night I found eviction papers taped to our door while Ethan burned with fever. Each story tore something open in him. I watched guilt and remorse carve deeper lines into his fair skin, watched him clench his fists as if he could fight the injustice of it all. One night, near Christmas, I told him about the anonymous donor who had paid for Ethan's first year of treatment 8 years earlier. Money that arrived just when we were drowning. "I never knew who it was," I whispered. "But it kept him alive long enough for me to fight longer." Alex went very still. His hand tightened around his glass. Something flickered across his face, deep, hidden pain. But he only said, "Some people see suffering and can't look away." I didn't press, but the curiosity burned. Another night, the bond deepened in a way I never expected. Ethan had a sudden fever spike, terrifying, the kind that sent us rushing to the emergency room in the old days. I was in Alex's office when the call came from the nanny I could now afford. Panic seized me. Dizziness hit so hard I gripped the desk to stay upright. Alex was on his feet in an instant, calling his private doctor, arranging a helicopter if needed. But it turned out to be a false alarm, just a virus. Still, he drove us himself to the hospital in his sleek black SUV, cutting through snow-slick streets like they belonged to him. In the waiting room, under harsh fluorescent lights, he sat beside me holding my hand. His palm was warm, steady. I leaned into his shoulder without thinking, exhaustion and fear overwhelming me. He stiffened for a heartbeat, unused to gentleness, perhaps, then wrapped an arm around me, pulling me close. We stayed like that for hours, his heartbeat steady under my ear, his expensive coat draped over my shoulders because I was shivering. When the doctor finally said Ethan could go home, relief crashed over me like a wave. In the hallway, away from prying eyes, I turned to Alex, tears streaming. "I don't know how to thank you," I whispered, voice soft and trembling. He cupped my face with both hands, thumbs brushing away tears, eyes burning with that overwhelming surge, the love that had ignited the first night and now consumed him. "You don't have to thank me," he said, voice rough with emotion. "Just let me be here. Let me love you." The words hung between us. My breath caught. Shock, terror, joy, violent, tearing emotions that left me numb and dizzy. A man like him, wealth, power, an empire at his fingertips, loving me? The poor barista who still flinched at loud voices, who counted pennies in her nightmares? I rose on tiptoes and pressed my forehead to his. "I'm scared," I admitted in the smallest voice. "Me too," he confessed, the admission tearing from him like a wound. "But I've never felt anything this real." In that quiet hospital corridor, snow falling silently outside the windows, the first spark became flame. His hand slid to the nape of my neck, gentle but possessive. I felt the tremor in his fingers, the violent inner conflict of a man who commanded fear, but now feared losing the one pure thing in his life. We didn't kiss, not yet, but the air between us crackled, passionate and intense, promising everything to come. Later, driving home through the glittering city, Ethan asleep in the back, Alex's hand rested on my knee, warm, grounding. I stared at the Christmas lights reflecting off the East River and felt my heart tear wider open. Gratitude, longing, terror that this happiness was too fragile for someone who had only ever known loss. Little did I know how soon the shadows would test it. The Christmas lights of New York twinkled like distant stars through the tower windows in late December 2025, but inside my heart, a storm raged that no holiday cheer could calm. The spark between Alex and me had grown into a flame, fierce, consuming, terrifying. Every brush of his hand when passing reports, every late-night glance across the office sent heat racing through my veins. I dreamed of him now, woke with his name on my lips. But dreams were dangerous for a woman like me, a former destitute single mother who still flinched at the memory of cold winds slicing through our old apartment, of nights when Ethan cried from hunger because I had given him my last scraps. I pulled away first. It happened the day Victoria Langford arrived. She stepped out of the private elevator like she owned the floor. Tall, honey blonde hair cascading in perfect waves, dressed in a red designer coat that screamed old money and untouchable confidence. Her blue eyes were ice, her smile practiced perfection. She walked straight to Alex's office, Marco holding the door without a word, as if she belonged. I was at my desk, reviewing year-end projections, when I heard her voice through the glass, light, familiar, intimate. Alexander, darling, Father sends his regards. The alliance talks are ready whenever you are. My stomach dropped. Alliance. The word echoed in rumors I had tried to ignore. The Harrington family's long-standing engagement to the Langfords of Boston. A union of two powerful East Coast dynasties. Political, strategic, unbreakable. I stood, legs unsteady, dizziness washing over me like it had in the old days when I skipped meals. Through the open door, I saw her touch his arm, possessive, casual. He didn't pull away immediately. His expression was guarded, but he nodded. Victoria, good to see you. The pain hit like a physical blow. Jealousy, raw, violent, tearing my heart in two. Who was I to feel this? A broke barista turned analyst, still thin from years of malnutrition, still carrying the shame of food stamps and overdue notices. He was Alexander Harrington, wealth beyond imagining, private helicopters, bodyguards who made problems disappear. I was nothing, a charity case he had lifted from poverty. The disparity humiliated me anew, numbing my thoughts until the world tilted. I fled to the stairwell, sinking onto cold concrete steps, sobs silent but wrenching. Memories flooded, the absurd unfairness of hospital bills that buried us while others vacationed. The night I begged a landlord for one more week, Ethan feverish in my arms. The wind howling through cracks as I whispered lies about tomorrow being better. And now this, loving a man who could never truly be mine. It was cruel, unjust. The tears came hot and relentless, evoking a pity so deep it hurt to breathe. When I returned, composed but guarded, Victoria was leaving his office. She passed my desk, eyes flicking over me with cool dismissal. But in the hallway later, her voice carried to a colleague, deliberate, loud enough for me to hear. The Langford-Harrington wedding will unite the families finally. Spring, I hear. Victoria's been planning since childhood. The words stabbed. Wedding. Childhood promise. My chest tightened, confusion and fear exploding inside. I loved him, passionately, intensely, from that first shadowed glance. But love like mine didn't belong in his world. That evening I left on time. No lingering, no shared dinner, just a polite, "Good night, Mr. Harrington," as I passed his door. Soft, timid, distant. He noticed immediately. The next days blurred into deliberate distance. I arrived early, left promptly. Declined late meetings with quiet excuses. In conferences, I spoke only of numbers, eyes on papers, not him. The flame still burned. Every accidental brush in the elevator sent fire through me. But I built walls higher than his tower. Alex's torment grew visible. I saw it in stolen glances, gray eyes darkening with pain, jaw clenched against the war inside. Remorse gnawed deeper, for pulling me close only to hurt me, for the arranged duty that chained him, for the love surging in him like a tidal wave he couldn't control. One night, I stayed late unintentionally, a report deadline. He found me in the cafeteria, pouring coffee with shaking hands. "Emily," he said, voice low, conflicted. "Talk to me." I kept my back turned, guarded, fearful. "There's nothing to say, sir. I'm just doing my job." The formality hit him like a blow. He stepped closer, wealth evident in every line, tailored shirt unbuttoned at the collar, watch glinting like a small fortune. "Victoria, it's an old obligation. Families, business. I never—" "Please," I whispered, voice soft, polite, but cracking. "Don't. I understand. I'm grateful for everything, the job, Ethan's care, the apartment. But I know my place." He flinched as if struck. "Your place?" His voice roughened with violent inner conflict, guilt crashing against the overwhelming love that had ignited months ago and now raged unchecked. You think that's all this is? Gratitude? Emily, from the moment you looked at me in that cafeteria, honest, unafraid, you owned me. I've fought it, hated myself for wanting you when my life is poison. But I love you, fiercely, completely. The confession tore the air. Shock numbed me. Dizziness returned, the room swaying. I gripped the counter, pain lancing my heart. A man like him, powerful, haunted, remorse eating him alive, loving me? The poor woman who still woke from nightmares of eviction? Tears spilled. You're engaged, I said, voice trembling, to someone like you. Beautiful, powerful. I'm the girl who mopped floors, who went days without eating. I can't. He reached for me, but I stepped back, fearful, curious despite the agony. Don't make this harder. His hand dropped, torment etching his fair features. I'll end it, whatever it takes. But duty called that night. A rival faction, the Doyle crew again, ambushed one of his shipments in Red Hook. Marco called. Alex left with fire in his eyes. I watched from the window as he confronted them on a snowy street. Bold, unexpected standoff under streetlights. No weapons drawn, just tense words and posturing. This ends now, Alex growled, voice carrying on the wind. One Doyle man shoved him. Alex twisted the arm in a controlled hold, dropping the attacker to his knees. His men closed in. The rivals retreated, threats lingering. He returned bruised, but victorious, for now. Found me waiting, unable to leave. You shouldn't have to do that, I whispered, horror and anxiety mixing. For you, I'd do worse. His eyes burned with that surge, passionate, intense love, clashing against remorse for the violence he wielded. In quiet stillness, he pulled me close. I resisted, then melted, just for a moment. Foreheads touching, breaths mingling. The flame roared. But the next morning, Victoria lingered in his office longer. Whispers spread, wedding plans advancing. I distanced further. Cold professionalism. No more sparks. The tearing inside us both grew unbearable. His guilt and love warring violently. My jealousy and unworthiness numbing everything. Unfair, absurd. The world giving me heaven only to snatch it away. Little did I know how much worse the shadows would become. January 2025 arrived with a vengeance, blanketing New York in ice and turning the streets into rivers of slush. The distance I had forced between Alex and myself had become a living thing, cold, aching, tearing at my heart every waking moment. I moved through the days like a ghost, polite nods in meetings, reports delivered without eye contact, evenings rushing home to Ethan before the sun set. The flame still burned inside me, passionate and intense, but I smothered it with reminders of reality. Victoria Langford's visits grew more frequent, her laughter echoing from Alex's office, her hand lingering on his sleeve. Each time, jealousy clawed deeper, leaving me numb, dizzy with pain. I told myself it was for the best. A man like him deserved someone who matched his world, not a former barista haunted by memories of malnutrition and wind howling through broken windows. But the shadows were closing in. It started with small things. A senior accountant named Claire Donovan, sharp-featured, ambitious, always perfectly dressed, began watching me with cold eyes. She had been with the company for years, climbing from junior roles while I had been mopping floors. Now I sat in meetings beside Alex, my insights shaping decisions. Her smiles were thin, her comments edged. Impressive how quickly some people rise, she said once in the hallway, voice sweet but venomous. I pretended not to hear, but the words stung, reminding me of my place, or lack of one. I didn't see the alliance forming. Claire's resentment found an unexpected partner, Ryan Harrington, Alex's cousin, exiled 3 years earlier for disloyalty. Ryan had always lived in Alex's shadow, bitter, hungry for what he believed was his birthright. From hiding in Philadelphia, he nursed grudges like open wounds. Claire, through encrypted messages, fed him everything. Schedules, security weaknesses, names of loyal men who could be bought. And most dangerously, information about me, the woman who had made Alex weak. The kidnapping happened on a bitter January evening. I left the tower later than planned, a report needing final touches. The underground garage was dimly lit, echoes bouncing off concrete. Ethan was with the nanny in our Brooklyn Heights apartment, safe, warm, a world away from the old Brownsville nights when wind had sliced through our lives like punishment. I walked to my car, a modest sedan Alex had quietly provided, keys trembling in my cold hands. A shadow moved behind me. Before I could turn, a hand clamped over my mouth, chemical smell flooding my senses. I struggled, terror exploding, horror for Ethan, for the life we had just begun. The world went black. I woke tied to a metal chair in a freezing warehouse in Queens, head throbbing, wrists raw from ropes. The air smelled of oil and rust. My body ached from the cold concrete floor where they had dropped me. Thin as I still was, malnourished echoes lingering despite better meals, the chill sank deep into my bones like those old nights. But this was worse, powerless, desperate. 3 men stood guard, and in front of me, Ryan Harrington, taller than Alex, but with colder gray eyes, madness flickering in them. "Hello, Emily," he said, voice smooth as poison. "Cousin's little pet project." I swallowed, voice soft, timid despite the fear. "Please, let me go. I have a son." He laughed. "That's the point. Alex will give me everything to get you back. Account codes, safe locations, control." I shook my head, guarded, heart pounding. "I don't know those things." "Liar." He nodded to a guard. The first blow landed on my stomach, hard, controlled, knocking air from my lungs. Pain exploded, dizziness crashing. I gasped, doubling as far as ropes allowed. The second strike cracked against my ribs. I heard something give, prayed it wasn't bone. Blood filled my mouth. "Codes," Ryan demanded. I spat blood, lifted my head, eyes burning despite tears. "No." Shock flickered across his face. This small, thin woman, former destitute mother, defying him. The beating continued. Each blow tore screams I swallowed, thinking only of Ethan's face, of Alex's tormented eyes. I would not betray the man who had pulled us from hell. Hours blurred. Pain became numbness. Cold seeped deeper. Memories flashed. Unreasonable injustices. The hospital turning us away once for lack of insurance, while luxury cars idled outside. The night I held Ethan through fever with no medicine, wind howling like mockery, selling my coat in winter to buy his antibiotics. Now this, absurd cruelty again. Between blows, quiet stillness descended. Ryan paced, frustration growing. "You're nothing," he hissed. "A charity case. He'll tire of you." The words cut deeper than fists. Humiliation flooded, tears silent, hot. He was right. I was nothing. Yet Alex had looked at me like I was everything. The inner tearing grew violent, love surging despite pain, clashing with unworthiness. Meanwhile, Alex discovered my absence. Security footage showed the abduction. Marco described later how Alex watched the screen, face draining of color, hands clenching until knuckles split. The man who ruled New York trembled. Fear, not for his empire, but for me. Guilt crashed harder. Remorse that his world had touched me. Violent conflict between the ruthless boss and the man desperately in love. "Find her," he ordered, voice breaking. "Every resource, now." He mobilized everyone. Streets turned upside down, informants shaken, rivals confronted in bold, tense standoffs. Alex facing Doyle leaders on frozen docks, O'Connor enforcers in alleyways, demanding information with barely leashed fury. Anyone touches her, they answer to me, he growled in one midnight confrontation, shoving a rival against a wall, eyes blazing. No blood spilled, but the city felt the threat. Ryan's mistake was underestimating Claire. Her jealousy made her sloppy. One message intercepted. Location traced. Alex stormed the warehouse with Marco and loyal men. Gunfire echoed briefly. Controlled bursts. Guards subdued. He found me slumped in the chair, bloodied, bruised, barely conscious. Emily, his voice shattered. He cut the ropes himself, hands shaking, lifted me gently, cradling against his chest. I stirred, pain lancing, but his warmth pierced the cold. Alex, I'm here, he whispered, voice raw with torment. I'm so sorry. Ryan appeared in the doorway, defiant. You're weak, cousin. All for a... Alex handed me to Marco, turned. The confrontation was swift, fists, not weapons. Alex disarmed Ryan, pinned him, rage and remorse pouring out. You touched what's mine. One blow ended it, Ryan unconscious. Alex returned to me, lifting me again. In the car rushing to hospital, he held me close, rocking slightly. Tears, his, fell into my hair. I almost lost you, he choked. My love, it's killing me. The guilt for bringing this on you. The fear. But God, Emily, I love you more than life. I clung weakly, shock and love surging despite pain. The poor woman who had endured wind and hunger, now protected by the most powerful man in the city. It tore my heart wider, violent, numbing joy clashing with terror. In the hospital, as doctors worked, he never left my side. Victoria arrived once, cold demand to talk. He ended it publicly. It's over. My heart belongs to Emily. Her fury was ice, but his resolve steel. As painkillers dulled the aches, I looked at him, bruised, exhausted, eyes burning with that overwhelming surge. Love, passionate, intense. From the first moment, now unbreakable. He pressed his forehead to mine. Never again, he vowed. I'll protect you, always. In that quiet, condensed stillness amid beeping monitors, our torn hearts began to heal, together. But the shadows weren't finished with us yet. The hospital room smelled of antiseptic and warm blankets, a world away from the freezing warehouse where I had nearly lost everything. It was late January 2025, and I lay in a private suite at New York Presbyterian. Soft lights, fresh flowers on the nightstand, a window overlooking the snow-dusted city. Alex had insisted. No shared wards, no waiting lists, just the best care money could buy. The disparity hit me anew. The memory of county hospitals where I had once begged for Ethan's admission, sitting on plastic chairs for hours while bills piled like mountains, now replaced by this quiet luxury. It humiliated me still. How easily wealth erased suffering for some, while others froze in the wind. Pain throbbed in my ribs, my face swollen, but the deepest ache was inside. Shock lingered, numbing and violent, tearing my heart between gratitude and terror. I had endured beatings for him, refused to betray him, and he had come, like a storm, unstoppable. He never left my side. Alex sat in the chair beside the bed, sleeves rolled up, fair skin shadowed with exhaustion. His expensive suit was rumpled, tie discarded. He held my hand as if afraid I would vanish. His gray eyes, usually so controlled, were raw, haunted. Guilt gnawed visibly, jaw clenched, knuckles white where he gripped the bed rail. Remorse poured from him in waves, violent inner conflict raging between the powerful man who commanded fear and the one broken by almost losing me. When I stirred, his head snapped up. "Emily," his voice cracked. He leaned forward, brushing hair from my forehead with trembling fingers. "You're safe. I'm here." Tears filled my eyes, voice soft, timid from pain and emotion. "Ethan, is he with Marco at the penthouse? Safe. He doesn't know details, just that Mommy got hurt and needs rest." His thumb stroked my knuckles, gentle despite the storm inside him. "I'll bring him tomorrow." A relief crashed, but confusion followed. Dizziness from medication and the surrealness of it all. The poor woman who had once sold blood plasma to buy formula, now protected by the most powerful man in New York. It tore at me violently. "You came for me," I whispered. He closed his eyes as if in agony. "I almost didn't make it in time." Voice rough, breaking. "Seeing you like that, bloodied because of my world. The guilt is eating me alive. I've spent years building this empire on shadows, thinking power would protect me from loss. But you're the only light I've ever had, and I nearly let Ryan snuff it out." His confession hung in the quiet, condensed stillness. I squeezed his hand weakly. "It wasn't your fault." "It was." He opened his eyes, torment blazing. Claire fed him information, jealousy, ambition, and Ryan, my own blood. I exiled him, but I should have ended the threat. My arrogance almost cost you your life. Horror flickered through me, anxiety for what his world truly meant. But curiosity too, and the love that had surged from the first moment, now exploding past all walls. He stood suddenly, pacing like a caged animal. Wealth evident even in distress, watch glinting, shoes that cost more than my old rent. Victoria came earlier, demanded explanations. I ended it, publicly. Told her the engagement was over, that my heart has belonged to you since the night you saved me, with nothing but truth. Shock numbed me. "You ended it? For me?" He stopped, turned. The surge in his eyes, passionate, intense love clashing with remorse, was overwhelming. For us. I've fought this feeling since you wrote that note on a napkin. Suspicion first. How could someone so pure exist in my dark world? Then gratitude. Then this fire, burning me alive. I love you, Emily, fiercely, completely, from the very first moment. Tears spilled hot down my bruised cheeks. The words tore my heart wider. Violent joy against unworthiness. A man like him, powerful, haunted, choosing me? The woman who still dreamed of cold winds and empty cupboards? I reached for him, voice trembling. I fought it too, told myself I didn't belong, that I was just the broke mom you helped out of pity. But Alex, I love you. So much it hurts. He sank to his knees beside the bed, gathering my hands, pressing them to his lips. The explosive confession broke us both open. He kissed my knuckles, tears, his, falling onto my skin. No pity, never. You're my salvation, the only honest thing in my life. In that moment, the flame became inferno. He leaned in carefully, mindful of bruises, and our lips met. The kiss was desperate, hungry, years of suppressed longing unleashed. Gentle at first, then fierce, his hand cupping my face, mine tangling in his hair. Pain faded under heat. The world narrowed to his warmth, his taste, the overwhelming surge of love that had ignited months ago and now consumed us. We broke apart gasping, foreheads pressed together. I was so scared, he whispered. Losing you, it would have ended me. Outside, the city stirred with new threats. Marco reported later, remnants of Ryan's loyalists stirring, angered by his defeat. Alex handled them personally, tense confrontations on icy streets. One night, I watched from the hospital window as news alerts flickered. Standoff in Harlem. Alex facing former allies turned rivals. Bold words exchanged under streetlights. Shoves and holds, but no blood. The old ways end, he warned them, voice carrying authority. They backed down, for now. He returned to me bruised but unbroken, collapsing into the chair. It's handled, he said quietly. But torment lingered, guilt for the violence he still wielded, even restrained. Claire was exposed, fired, banished from the city. Justice, but cold comfort. Days blurred into healing. Alex brought Ethan, my boy's eyes wide at the private room, but he climbed carefully onto the bed, hugging me gently. "Mommy, Mr. Alex said you're a hero." I glanced at Alex, heart tearing with love. He smiled, small, genuine, eyes soft only for us. When discharged, he took us to the penthouse. Not temporary, permanent if I wished. I stood on the balcony, snow falling softly, his arms around me from behind. Wealth surrounded us, city lights like jewels below. But the real treasure was him. "I don't know how to be this happy," I confessed, voice soft, fearful. He turned me, eyes burning. "We'll learn together." The kiss that followed was explosive, passionate, intense, sealing the confession that had shattered and remade us. In quiet stillness afterward, wrapped in his arms, I felt the tearing heal into something stronger. Love. Unreasonable, unjust in its beauty, lifting the destitute mother into light. But even as we clung together, I sensed the final storm gathering. Victoria's pride would not accept defeat quietly. Little did we know how fierce the reckoning would be. February 2025 wrapped New York in a deceptive hush, snow muffling the city while storms brewed beneath the surface. I healed slowly in Alex's Tribeca penthouse, ribs bandaged, bruises fading from purple to yellow. Every mirror reminded me of the warehouse, swollen eyes, split lip. But the deeper wounds were inside, healing and tearing at once. The explosive confession in the hospital had shattered every wall. Love, once guarded and distant, now surged between us like a living flame, passionate, intense, impossible to contain. Alex moved us there permanently. Ethan had his own room overlooking the Hudson, filled with books and toys I could never have afforded. I wandered the vast spaces in borrowed silk robes, dizziness striking at odd moments from the sheer excess. Marble counters, original art on walls, a fireplace that roared with real logs. The contrast humiliated me still. Memories flooded unbidden, the pitiful nights in Brownsville when wind howled through cracks and I rationed cereal so Ethan could have milk. The time I walked miles in snow because bus fare meant choosing between heat and food. Unreasonable, unjust suffering that had shaped me thin and wary. Now, surrounded by wealth that could end hunger for thousands, I felt small, unworthy. But Alex looked at me like I was everything. He worked from home, canceling meetings, delegating empires. His guilt ran deeper than ever, remorse for the violence that had touched me, violent inner conflict between the ruthless leader and the man desperate to deserve love. He watched me constantly, gray eyes tormented. "I should have protected you better," he whispered one morning, voice rough. "My world almost killed you." I touched his face, voice soft, timid. "You saved me." Again. The passion built slowly, then erupted. It started with small touches, his hand on my back guiding me to the sofa, fingers lingering, brushing hair from my face, thumbs tracing bruises with heartbreaking gentleness. Late nights by the fire, sharing whiskey, talking until dawn. I told him more of the past, the absurd unfairness of losing my scholarship when Ethan fell ill, selling everything, including my mother's locket, to pay one more bill. Each story carved pain across his features, guilt crashing against love. One evening, snow falling thick outside, Ethan asleep early, we sat on the plush rug before the fireplace. Alex poured wine, vintage, expensive, glowing ruby in crystal glasses. "Tell me something good," he said quietly, "from before." I thought, tears pricking. The day Ethan laughed for the first time after a treatment. I had nothing, no food in the fridge, heat shut off, but his laugh, it was everything. He set his glass down, eyes darkening with that overwhelming surge. "You're incredible," he murmured, "stronger than anyone I've ever known." The air thickened. He reached, cupping my cheek. I leaned into his palm without thinking. The kiss began soft, testing, reverent. Then hunger took over. His arms pulled me close, careful of healing ribs, but desperate. My hands tangled in his hair, pulling him deeper. The flame exploded. Years of longing, fear, love unleashed. We moved together, urgent yet tender, shedding clothes like old skins. In his bed, vast, soft, sheets that cost more than my old rent, we surrendered completely, passionate, intense. Every touch a confession, every gasp a vow. He worshipped bruises with kisses, whispering my name like prayer. I clung to him, tears mixing with pleasure. The poor woman who had known only survival, now claimed by a man whose love felt like salvation. Shock and joy tore me apart. Dizziness from overwhelming sensation, numbness giving way to fire. Afterward, tangled in sheets, firelight dancing on his fair skin, he held me close. "I've never felt this," he confessed, voice raw. "Not with anyone. You own me, Emily, heart and soul." I traced his chest, heart tearing with love and lingering unworthiness. "I'm scared it's a dream." "It's real," he vowed, kissing my forehead, "and I'll spend my life proving it." The days blurred into nights of the same, exploring each other, healing in closeness. He cooked for me, simple things but with care. Pasta, steaks from markets I had only walked past. We laughed with Ethan over board games on the rug. Domestic bliss in a palace. But the contrast haunted me. Memories of cold wind nights when I cried alone, now replaced by warmth I feared losing. Outside, threats simmered. Victoria did not accept rejection quietly. Humiliated before both families, she returned to Boston and stoked her father's rage. Whispers reached Alex, alliances shifting, old rivals emboldened. He handled them with tense confrontations, late-night drives to meet Doyle or O'Connor lieutenants on neutral ground. One snowy midnight, he returned with snow in his hair, knuckles red from a controlled scuffle. "They're testing boundaries," he said, torment deepening. "Because of me. Because I chose you." I bandaged his hand, anxiety clawing. "Is it worth it?" He pulled me close, eyes burning. "You're worth everything." But the passion gave us strength. In quiet, condensed moments, dawn light filtering through windows, his arms around me, we planned futures. "When Ethan's stronger," he said once, "we'll travel. Show him the world you never got to see." Tears came then, for the unjust life that had denied me so much, now offering abundance through him. "I don't deserve this," I whispered. "You deserve more," he countered fiercely. Love surged, passionate, protective. Claire's betrayal was fully exposed, evidence of her communications with Ryan. Alex banished her from the city, wealth and connections stripped. Justice, but cold. As bruises faded, our surrender deepened. Nights became sacred, bodies and souls entwining, love expressed in whispers and cries. He traced scars from poverty's neglect, stretch marks from pregnancy with no prenatal care, hands once cracked from bleach. "Beautiful," he murmured. "Every mark tells your strength." I believed him, slowly. The tearing inside healed into fierce bond, his remorse transforming into determination to be better, my unworthiness into acceptance of love. In the firelight one night, snow silent outside, he held me after passion spent. "Marry me," he whispered suddenly. "Not now, when you're ready, but know you're my forever." Shock numbed me, then joy exploded. Tears, laughter. "Yes," I breathed, 1,000 times yes. We kissed, slow, deep, sealing the surrender. But even in bliss, I felt shadows lengthening. Victoria's pride, rival ambitions, they would not rest. Little did we know the final battle loomed, threatening everything we had built. March 2025 brought the first hints of spring to New York. Crocuses pushing through snow in Central Park, sunlight lingering longer over the skyline. I had been fully healed for weeks, body and heart intertwined with Alex's in a rhythm that still left me breathless. Our nights were fire, passionate, intense surrender that erased every shadow. Days were filled with Ethan's laughter echoing through the penthouse, board games on the rug, Alex teaching him chess with infinite patience. I watched them together, heart tearing with joy so fierce it hurt. The destitute mother who had once rationed soup bones, now watching her son thrive under the protection of a man whose love felt like destiny. But destiny, I learned, had deeper layers. It began with a routine review of old financial archives, part of cleaning up vulnerabilities after Ryan's betrayal. I sat in my home office, sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows, sipping coffee from a mug that cost more than my old weekly grocery budget. The files were digital now, but one folder caught my eye: anonymous charitable trusts buried deep in Harrington Foundation records. Curiosity tugged. I opened them. The first document froze my blood. A trust established 8 years earlier, in Ethan's name. Monthly deposits covering every leukemia treatment from his diagnosis at age 1. The amounts matched exactly. The experimental drugs the hospital had miraculously approved. The private room during his worst crisis. The years I thought strangers' donations had saved us. The trail led back, encrypted, hidden, but unmistakable, to Alexander Harrington. My hands shook. Dizziness crashed, the room tilting. I gripped the desk, numbness spreading. Shock, violent, tearing, ripped through me. 8 years before we met, before the cafeteria discovery. I printed the evidence, heart pounding, and waited for Alex to return from a meeting. He found me in the living room, papers spread on the coffee table, Ethan napping upstairs. His smile faded at my expression. "Emily, what's wrong?" I held up the trust summary, voice soft, trembling. "This, Ethan's treatments, all of it, you." He went still. Gray eyes widened, then closed in pain. Remorse flooded his features, deep, consuming. He sank onto the sofa, head in hands. "You weren't supposed to find out. Not like this." The confession poured from him. 15 years earlier, as a troubled teenager bleeding in a Brooklyn alley after a gang fight, I had saved his life. An anonymous 13-year-old girl calling 911, staying until help came, then vanishing. He never forgot the voice, the kindness in chaos. Years later, building his empire, he tracked me down, quietly, obsessively. Found a struggling single mother with a dying child. "I couldn't save my own mother from illness," he said, voice breaking. "She died when I was young, money too late. But you, the girl who saved me, I could save your son, anonymously, so you'd never feel obligated." Tears streamed down my face. Shock numbed everything, dizziness, pain, joy exploding violently. "You've been protecting us since I was 13? Before you even knew my name?" He nodded, torment carving his face. Guilt clashed with love. "I watched from afar, saw you fight alone, selling everything, working nights, crying in hospital parking lots when bills came. It tore me apart. I told myself it was repayment, but it became more. Obsession, longing. when you walked into my tower that night with the napkin note. Fate, the girl who saved me, saving me again. I stood, legs unsteady, crossing to him. Tears blurred everything. All those years I prayed for miracles. It was you. He pulled me into his lap, arms trembling. I didn't want gratitude. I wanted you free to hate the world if you needed. But God, Emily, knowing you were out there suffering while I had everything, it haunted me. Guilt every day. The surge hit us both, love layered now with mythic depth. I kissed him fiercely, tears mixing, hands clutching as if he'd vanish. Passion exploded anew, intense, burning gratitude and desire. We moved to the bedroom, urgent, worshipful, clothes shed like old grief, every touch a thank you, every gasp a vow. He whispered against my skin, "You saved me twice, body and soul." Afterward, tangled in sheets, sunlight warming us, I traced his face. Why hide it? Fear, he admitted, remorse raw, that you'd think it pity or control. I wanted you to choose me freely. Quiet, condensed stillness enveloped us. My heart tore wider, violent joy at the destiny binding us, lingering unworthiness that a man so powerful had watched over me in secret. Ethan's voice called from downstairs, hungry for lunch. We dressed, laughing through tears, and joined him. Watching Alex lift my son onto his shoulders, spinning him gently, I felt completeness I never dreamed possible. But the secret's reveal stirred ripples. That night, analyzing more files, habit now, I spotted anomalies. Money flows from Boston accounts, disguised transfers building quietly. Victoria, financing something. Weapons caches? Men moving in shadows? I showed Alex. His face hardened, but eyes softened on me. She won't touch us. He confronted remnants in tense street meetings, bold standoffs under Brooklyn bridges, icy docks. Langford money stops now, he warned one captain, voice steel, hand on the man's collar in controlled pressure. Rivals backed off, sensing his resolve. Victoria's fury grew, but Alex's love armored us. In firelight that night, he held me close. You and Ethan, you're my world. Everything else can burn. I believed him. The shocking twist bound us deeper, love now eternal, passionate, layered with fate. Little did we know Victoria's final vengeance would strike at our heart. April 2025 teased New York with warm breezes and blooming cherry trees. But beneath the beauty, a chill lingered in my heart. The revelation of Alex's secret protection, his quiet guardianship over Ethan and me for 8 long years, had bound us in a love deeper than I ever imagined possible. Our days were filled with light, mornings cooking breakfast together in the sunlit kitchen, Ethan's laughter as Alex taught him to ride a bike in the private garden below the penthouse. Evenings lost in each other's arms, passion burning brighter with every shared breath. I no longer flinched at luxury, the private chef, the driver, the clothes that fit perfectly. Yet echoes of poverty haunted me still. Dreams of wind howling through broken windows, of choosing between medicine and food, of holding Ethan while he cried from pain I couldn't ease. The contrast tore at me, violent gratitude clashing with lingering shame. Alex's love was my anchor. He carried new torment, remorse that his hidden acts had spared us suffering but denied us truth, guilt that his world still cast shadows. His gray eyes searched mine constantly, as if fearing I'd vanish. "You're my redemption," he whispered one dawn, tracing my face in golden light. The surge between us, passionate, intense, eternal, consumed every doubt. But Victoria Langford's pride would not yield. Humiliated by the broken engagement, she had returned to Boston and woven a darker alliance. Remnants of Ryan's faction joined with a ruthless Colombian cartel, eager to claim New York territory. Money flowed, her father's wealth fueling ambition. I spotted the patterns first. Unusual transfers in offshore accounts, disguised as legitimate investments. "She's planning something big," I told Alex one evening, showing him the trails. His face hardened, but he kissed my forehead. "I'll stop it." He confronted intermediaries in tense, bold standoffs, midnight meetings on rainy Brooklyn piers, unexpected face-offs in Harlem lots. "Langford money dries up tonight," he warned one cartel lieutenant, voice low, hand gripping the man's collar in controlled pressure. Rivals retreated, sensing his resolve. But Victoria escalated. The blow came on a perfect spring afternoon. Ethan's school, a private academy Alex had enrolled him in, with manicured grounds and security I once only dreamed of, dismissed early for a teacher conference. The nanny walked him out. A black van screeched to the curb. Masked men grabbed him before screams could fully form. The call came as I prepared dinner in the penthouse kitchen. Sunlight pouring through windows, classical music playing softly. Marco's voice, tight. "Ethan's gone, taken from school." The phone slipped from my hand. Dizziness crashed, violent, numbing. The world tilted. I gripped the counter, pain exploding in my chest. Horror, anxiety, fear, raw maternal terror. My boy, my everything. Memories flooded. Unjust nights holding him through fevers with no doctor. Wind mocking our helplessness. Now this, cruel, absurd theft. Alex arrived minutes later, face ashen. He caught me as knees buckled. "We'll get him back," he vowed, voice shaking with rage and guilt. "I swear on my life." The demand came an hour later, a burner phone left at the school gate. Victoria's voice, cold, triumphant. "Alexander, surrender full control of Harrington operations, ports, routes, everything, or the boy dies by midnight. Come alone to the old Bronx shipyard. No police, no men." Alex's torment peaked, remorse crashing like waves. "This is because of me," he choked, holding me as I sobbed. "My choices, my enemies." I clung to him, desperate, powerless echoes returning. "Save him, please." The shipyard at midnight was a graveyard of rusted containers and fog rolling off the water. Alex went alone, unarmed, as demanded. I followed against orders, hidden in shadows, maternal instinct overriding fear. Victoria waited under floodlights, Ethan bound nearby, small face pale but defiant. Cartel men flanked her, weapons visible but not raised. "You chose the wrong woman," she sneered. "Now pay." Alex's voice was steel over tremor. "Let the boy go. Take me instead." She laughed, pressing a barrel to Ethan's temple. Too late for bargains. Horror seized me. I stepped from shadows, hands raised. "Don't, please." Voice soft, pleading, maternal sacrifice burning. "If someone has to die, take me. He's just a child. My child." Victoria's eyes widened, then narrowed in hatred. Pathetic. Ethan's small voice. "Mommy." Alex turned, shock and love exploding. "Emily, no!" In that heartbeat, everything converged. Alex lunged, swift, trained, disarming Victoria in a brutal twist, shielding Ethan. Cartel men moved, chaos erupted. Fists, holds, controlled takedowns, Alex fighting like a demon, protecting us both. One shot rang, Victoria falling, cartel leader subdued. But Alex staggered, blood blooming on his chest. Twice hit. He collapsed near Ethan, untying him with weakening hands. I rushed forward, cradling Alex, horror and love tearing me apart. "Stay with me," I sobbed, pressing wounds. "Please." Ethan clung to us, crying. Sirens wailed. Marco had tracked, called discreet help. Medics swarmed. In the ambulance, Alex's hand found mine, eyes locked despite pain. Love you, both. Voice fading. At the hospital, surgeons fought hours. I sat in the waiting room, once familiar from desperate poverty nights, now private sweet irony. Ethan asleep against me. Guilt, fear, love, violent, numbing. The poor mother who had endured everything, now facing loss again. He survived, barely. When he woke, bandaged, pale, he reached for me. Ethan? Safe, with Marco. Relief flooded his eyes, but torment deeper. I can't do this anymore, he whispered. The danger, for you, for him. In quiet stillness, holding his hand, I knew change was coming. The ultimate betrayal had broken something final in him. Victoria gone, cartel scattered, but the cost too high. Love, passionate, intense, demanded sacrifice. Little did we know it would lead to redemption beyond imagining. Summer 2025 painted New York in golden light, but inside the private hospital room, time stood still. Alex lay pale against white sheets, monitors beeping steady rhythms of survival. The bullets had missed his heart by inches, but they had struck something deeper, his resolve. I sat beside him day and night, Ethan curled on the sofa under blankets, my hand never leaving Alex's. The tearing in my heart had reached its peak. Violent gratitude for his life, numbing fear that we might still lose him. Passionate love that refused to let go. He woke fully on the 5th day. Gray eyes found mine first. Emily, he rasped. Ethan? Safe. Here. I guided our son's small hand into his. Ethan's face lit with relief. Alex's tears fell silently. Remorse, love, a man broken and remade. In the quiet, condensed weeks of recovery, he made the hardest choice of his life. I can't keep you in this world, he whispered one dawn, city waking below us. Not anymore. The danger. It will never end while I hold power. I feared what he meant, but his eyes held peace. I'm going to the authorities. Everything I know. Cartels, rivals, old operations. Enough to dismantle them. In exchange for immunity. For us. Shock numbed me. Your empire means nothing without you. His voice broke with inner torment. I've lived in shadows too long. Guilt has eaten me alive. Now I choose light. The process was quiet, protected. Meetings with federal agents in secure rooms. Evidence handed over. Years of knowledge that ended threats across the city. Rivals scattered or fell. The Harrington name shifted. Illegal routes closed. Legitimate businesses expanded. Real estate, tech, philanthropy. Alex kept only what was clean. Wealth remained, vast, responsible, but power changed form. 6 months later, on a crisp October afternoon in 2025, he took me to Brooklyn, to the old brownstone where I had grown up, where Ethan was born, where wind had once howled mercilessly through cracks while I held my newborn and cried from hunger and fear. It stood restored, warm brick glowing, garden blooming, white fence gleaming. Inside, fresh paint, hardwood floors, a kitchen filled with light. I stood in the doorway, dizziness sweeping. What? He knelt in the garden where I had once sat alone after my father's death, opening a small box. A diamond ring sparkled. Simple, perfect. I want to rebuild your dreams here, he said, eyes filled with love beyond wealth or status, where you lost them. I can't promise perfection, but I promise to stand beside you every day, to fight for you, to love you with everything I am. Emily Carter, will you marry me? Tears blurred everything, joy, violent, healing. The destitute girl who had known only survival now offered forever by a man whose heart saw beyond poverty or power. Yes, I whispered. Forever, yes. We married quietly in that garden, Ethan as ring bearer in a tiny suit, Marco as best man, tears in his hardened eyes. No hundreds of guests, just those who mattered. I walked in a simple white dress, barefoot on grass, feeling like the girl I once dreamed of being. 5 years passed in a blur of grace. We founded the Harrington Second Chance Foundation, scholarships for single parents, leukemia research, job training for at-risk youth. Knowledge became our weapon, education the bridge from poverty to possibility. We taught that true strength lies not in wealth or fear, but in compassion, in choosing love regardless of background, skin color, or past. Alex, once the most feared man in New York, now spoke at schools about redemption. I worked beside him, sharing my story, how knowledge of numbers saved us, how education, formal and hard-earned, opened doors, how one lesson of kindness can change lives. Ethan thrived, healthy, bright, calling Alex Dad. We welcomed a daughter, Lila, dark curls like mine, gray eyes like his. Our home echoed with children's laughter, no wind howling, no empty cupboards. In quiet evenings, Alex held me on the brownstone porch. I was lost, he said once. Power filled the emptiness, but never healed it. You taught me the real lesson. Love is the only legacy that matters. I rested my head on his shoulder, heart full. From suspicion in a shadowed cafeteria to this overwhelming surge, passionate, intense, eternal. Wealth and poverty could not separate what fate and compassion had joined. Dear friends, this story of Emily and Alex carries profound lessons. Knowledge saved them. Knowledge of numbers, of self, of mercy. Education lifted them, formal learning and the harder education of suffering. Knowledge guided choices. Education opened hearts. Knowledge of another's pain sparked change. Education in forgiveness healed wounds. Knowledge that love transcends status became their light. We hope this tale reminds you, no past defines you. No circumstance is final. Compassion crosses every divide. Love sees the soul, not the skin, not the bank account. What did this story make you feel? Did it touch something in your own life? A lesson learned through hardship? A moment education changed everything? Knowledge that shifted your path? Share in the comments below. We truly want to hear the emotions deep in your hearts. If this moved you, please like, subscribe to Alex Truths, and share with someone who needs hope today. New inspiring stories every day. We wish you good health, a joyful life, and peace every single day. Goodbye, and see you in the next video. Disclaimer: all stories on this channel are fictional and created solely for entertainment purposes. Any resemblance to real people, events, or places is purely coincidental.